Alright, so I know it's overdue, but I want to make a video on this story that we got on the 17th of January in the year 17. One of the big stories in the news that day, or probably the biggest story in the news that day, was about how Obama commuted a bunch of people, but he commuted this Chelsea Manning or Bradley Manning or whatever you want to call it. There was a whole bunch of 17 stuff going on with this story. The last time that we got a story about Chelsea Manning was on September 13th, 13/9. If you write out Bradley Manning, it equals 139 in gematria. And if you don't know what gematria is, it'll be in the top of the description. I'll leave a link, a little 15-minute video. You'll understand what I'm talking about. But anyway, Bradley Manning, 139. The last time we got a story about him or her or whatever was on 13/9, and the whole story was about how they allowed him to become a woman in prison. And then, whatever it was, not even 5 days later, we got the Chelsea bombing. We got, the 5K trash bombing, the Chelsea bombing, and the Minnesota mall stabbing all on the same day. And all three of them stories were interrelated. I'll leave a couple links in the description as well for that. They're really long, they're probably an hour long, but I truly show how them three stories were all interrelated. Anyway, it says that Obama commuted this person then, and it was a 35-year sentence. The date numerology of this day, 1 plus 17 plus 17 is even 35. So he commuted a 35-year sentence on a date numerology of 35. I also put in here that the last story to this news story was a span of 126 days. Just because I've been seeing this number a lot in regards to some other stories. In doing all of these things, I've been talking about forever how all of these stories, they always seem to be interrelated. Basically, it is truly just like a puzzle. Imagine getting like a big puzzle out and, starting from scratch, and you're trying to figure out what piece goes where, and then you finally get a few that fit, and you start to see the bigger picture with the puzzle, that's the same thing that the media does. I swear, every one of the stories, somehow, some way, they always come back and they're all interrelated. I'm sure this story has something to do with Bruce Jenner and whatnot. Bruce Jenner is supposedly going to pose nude in 2017. Disgusting. But, what I'm thinking about it too, just think about this story in regards to being transgendered and whatnot. Their last name is Manning, and they're a transgendered person. And Bruce Jenner sounds a lot like gender and man, and they're both transgendered. That's all part of the joke that they're playing on you, But I guess what I'm talking about is in regards to this 126. There was a whole bunch of stuff with Eugene Cernan. He died 126 days before his birthday. He was in Attack Squadron 126 or something like that. I can't even remember it all. I talked about it like a week ago. But let me find this other story really quick. And I'm sorry to get off topic, and I will get back and show you a bunch of the 17s in this story. But we also got the death of this guy right here, Miguel Ferrer, or however you say his name, some NCIS Los Angeles guy. He died age 61. He died on the 19th day, and it was 19 days before his birthday. In the article, though, they mentioned that he was cousins to George Clooney. And, if you followed what I've been talking about for the last year or since the death of Prince, there's a big moon theme and whatnot, and The Simpsons killed Prince off on 11/2, and in that episode they also killed Neil Armstrong, the first guy to walk on the moon, and George Clooney. And some weird, crazy stuff happened to me when I was making a video when the movie Gravity just supposedly came on. I don't know how the movie was even on, but whatever. George Clooney was a big piece to the space puzzle and whatnot. This guy's named Miguel Ferrer and George Clooney. They both equal 74 in Gematria. They're related through this lady, Rosemary Clooney. Rosemary Clooney died at the age of 74. Ferrer died at age 61 of throat cancer. George Clooney was born in the year 61 on the 126th day. And that's where the Eugene Cernan stuff comes in. The first and the last guys to walk on the moon. Cernan the last, Neil Armstrong the first. Throat cancer equals 126. Even if you write out George Clooney's full name, it equals 112. Eugene Cernan equals 112. The Simpsons killed him off on 11/2, like a lot like 112. Prince died on the 112th day of the year on the night of a full moon at the age of 57. Moon equals 57. So I think that's why I wrote this in here, just because I know how all these stories eventually are somehow oddly interrelated. So what I was talking about in the previous story about Chelsea Manning, and then we got the Chelsea bombing and whatnot, the Minnesota Mall stabbing was whatever. It was connected to the U.S. Bank Stadium in Minnesota, Minneapolis, and whatever. And the first ever sporting game to be played there was a soccer game, and the team that won was Chelsea. And they play in Stamford Bridge. And Stamford, Connecticut is where the first ever marathon was ran in the United States. And that 5K race, the trash bombing was super synced up to the Boston Marathon. And, the Boston Marathon that had the 666 Boylston Street. And then we just got the movie with Mark Wahlberg coming out about the Boston bombing, right around the same time, I think when the movie came out, December, or I think everywhere in January 13th. But anyway, if you went back and watched a ton of my stuff, and that's what I'm saying, it's just a build off of other videos, other information. There's just so much to go back and so much to remember. But we had the death of Gene Wilder this year. He died in Stamford, Connecticut. I talked a lot about the death of Sam Foltz and Mike Sadler, the college football players and whatnot. Mike Sadler was born in Stamford. A lot of the race stuff and whatnot, it goes back to, and especially with the baseball and whatnot, it goes back to Jackie Robinson, who died in Stamford. I talked a lot about how it was connected to Back to the Future. Even though Back to the Future says 2015, it was still connected to this year. And Christopher Lloyd, Doc Brown, is from Stamford, Connecticut. And in regards to the Boston Marathon and 666 Boylston Street, I was mentioning how 88 years ago, the first famous exorcism in the United States was in Erling, Iowa, which is just 13 miles from where I live. And that town was originally called Marthon, Iowa, and they changed it because there was already a town called Marathon, Iowa, and the girl that got exorcised who came there came from Marathon, Wisconsin, and 88 was a number I've talked a lot about in regards to satanic ritual stuff, it seems. And Marathon, it's 26 miles, God equals 26. But isn't it kind of funny that we got the death of William Peter Blatty, and then all of a sudden we get another story about Chelsea Manning? It's all interrelated to what I'm talking about. Also, that exorcism that I'm talking about, if you look up the history of it, you find out that the movie and the film were partially based off of this story. Like the girl's head spinning around and the climbing on the ceiling. All of that happened in this Erling, Iowa case. Even though it doesn't claim that, like they say that it's the Robbie Mannheim thing, but none of that happened in the Robbie Mannheim thing. If you look up the Erling, Iowa one, it actually, a lot of the things that are in the movie and the book are actually based off of that, even though it's not credited for some weird reason. But anyway, let's go back to the Chelsea Manning stuff then. The Chelsea bombing, the 5K trash bombing, and it was also connected to the royal family and whatnot. It was in Elizabeth, New Jersey. Elizabeth and Gematria equals 88. Trump equals 88. And this was 88 years since that exorcism. And if you look up Chelsea Manning, it says that she lived in Wales when her parents got divorced. She lived in Wales from age 13 to age 17. And if you watched my Miami Dolphins stuff, I talked about how there's a big parallel between 13 and 17. Dan Marino wore number 13. Ryan Tannehill, the Dolphins' current quarterback, wearing number 17. Tannehill got hurt after the 13th game of the season this year. Marino's final game was 17 years ago. He played for 17 seasons. If you went from Prince Charles's birthday, who will become the king if Queen Elizabeth dies, it was a span of 65 days that we got the story. Prince equals 65. Miami, Florida equals 65. The date in London even would be 17/1, a lot like 171. If you write out English Civil War, it equals 171. And the Charleses in royal history are the kings that were the kings during the English Civil War. And if King Charles or Prince Charles becomes King Charles, he'll become King Charles III, reminding us of the English Civil War again. So anyway, to the 17th, so the story came out on the 17th day of the year. Chelsea Manning, who is like just funny, the picture is just of a dude, and then it's Chelsea, but whatever. Chelsea Manning, born on the 17th day of December. Also Pope Francis's birthday, which is interesting, but not going to go off of that. So the story comes out on the 17th. Manning's birthday is the 17th. It's in the year 17, and they say that she's going to be released on May 17th, And then she moved back to the United States at the age of 17. The Chelsea bombing was on the 17th of September. This person arrested because of, WikiLeaks. WikiLeaks in Gematria equals 37. If you write out 17, it also equals 37. So something super special about the number 17 in regards to Chelsea Bradley. It even says that after the trial or whatever, that Manning was convicted of 17 of the original charges. Born on the 7th. Once again, this story comes out on the 17th, born on the 17th day of the, and then now we're in the year 17. Moved back to the United States at the age of 17, going to get released on the 17th of May. The Chelsea bombing was on the 17th of September, and she was convicted of 17 of the original charges. May 17th, when she's going to get released, also the 137th day of the year. The 33rd prime is 137. All of this ties into Freemasonry. The Freemasons are people who, abuse this system, know about this system. I've talked about how it's so much bigger, but there's definitely people who are involved and people who at least understand it and they use it to their advantage. I still think that it's connected to the Super Bowl. What I wrote in here was in regards to Jordy Nelson and some of the stuff with the Packers, but there's just sub-themes and whatnot that are all interrelated. They all come back to each other. A lot with the Packers was just in regards to the first and the last. We had the first guy to walk on the moon, Neil Armstrong, die, that I've been mentioning, and then we got the death of Gene Cernan this year, the last guy to walk on the moon. The Packers were the first team to win the Super Bowl, and I was talking about how this year has possibly been foreshadowed to be the last Super Bowl ever. So the first and the last, the Alpha, the Omega, possibly all of the hype on the Packers was just literally just to show us that theme, that it's possibly going to be the last Super Bowl. Anyway, Manning's birthday to the day she's going to get released, 152 days. It's also 5 months, 1 day. You know, we're going into Super Bowl 51. In Gematria, if you write out Super Bowl LI, it equals 53 and 152. You know, Chelsea equals 53. When I'm thinking about it too, the story coming out on January 17th, in regards to trannies and whatnot, it totally reminds me of Michelle Obama. I don't know if Michelle Obama is a tranny. I could care less. But there's all this hype on it, you know, on YouTube and whatnot. And she was born on January 17th, so this was her birthday, and we get a story about the transgendered Chelsea Manning. And she's also 53 years old. Melania Trump, I've also seen people talking about her being a transgendered person. Her birthday and a non-leap year on the 117th day of the year. So pretty interesting. I'm pretty sure I made a video in regards to this too, clear back in the College World Series, talking about this number in regards to, oh man, sex reassignment surgery and something to do with South Park and a train wreck in Colorado. I can't remember what it was for sure now, but, you know, interesting. 117th day of the year was her 46th birthday then. Her name in Gematria even equals 53. So I guess just interesting that we get this story. I don't know, just thought of that right now. So whatever. Manning is 29 years old. The word football equals 29. The headline was Obama to free Manning. That equals 83 in Gematria. Football the big way equals 83. The first NFL game to be played at US Bank Stadium, and I was talking about the Minnesota mall stabbing and how it connected to the Chelsea bombing and the 5K trash bombing and whatnot. But the first ever NFL game played there was in week 3. It was a preseason game though, and it was the Vikings versus the Chargers, which is just interesting because the Chargers were just in the news too. I never did make that video on that, but you know, the Chargers moving to LA. But week 3 was also the same week that Colin Kaepernick didn't stand during the national anthem. They were playing a game against the Packers. And if you've been following my channel, the Atlanta Falcons played the Miami Dolphins that weekend. So, or that week or whatever. I believe it was the Thursday night game or something, but interesting, you know. And the first regular season game to be played at US Bank Stadium was the Vikings versus the Packers. And it was the tribute. They were doing a tribute to Prince, and then the very first touchdown pass of the game was Aaron Rodgers to Jordy Nelson. Rodgers to Nelson. Prince's name is Prince Rodgers Nelson. And that game just so happened to be on September 18th, which was the day after the Chelsea bombing and whatnot. So I don't know the full meaning of it, you know, but it's definitely was super coded, synced up to them two teams for whatever the reason. I mean, there's still tributes to Prince going on, or at least with the number 112. Seems a lot of stuff with Prince still. So that's probably why this was so significant or whatever. Or, you know, possibly there's just something that I'm not seeing, but We'll just go through this, you know. The Packers aren't in the Super Bowl, but Jordy Nelson, his name in Gematria equals 151, born on the 151st day of the year. There's a big Jesus Christ type symbolism going on with the Super Bowl this year. Jesus Christ equals 151. If the Falcons win the Super Bowl, then they'll be 7-7 against the Patriots. Christ equals 77 in Gematria. Talked a whole lot about the number 318. March 18th is the 77th day of the year. The second coming of Jesus Christ, mentioned 318 times in the New Testament. There's also a number connected to pi. Also, without the end date, Chelsea Manning's birthday, or that story, she'll be released 151 days after her birthday. You know, just once again, fitting for the 151. 15 and 51. Donald Trump is 15 years, 51 days older than Barack Obama. The Giordano Ventura, the Kansas City Royal story, that's a super tribute to not only Queen Elizabeth, but Queen Victoria, who she surpassed. Victoria died on January 22nd, but so did Giordano Ventura. Kansas City equals 122. I'm going to make a video on that next, but in regards to 15 and 51, Victoria died 51 years, 15 days before Queen Elizabeth became the queen, and all kinds of stuff. Lots of 1551. Jordy Nelson, it even says he played college at Kansas State University under the coach Bill Schneider, but then when he retired, he kept playing there, and he played under Ron Prince. How interesting is that? Rogers to Nelson, the tribute to Prince. He played college underneath a guy named Ron Prince, who just so happened to be born the same day of that game. He turned 47 on that day. He's even from Omaha, Nebraska, a place that I've mentioned is just loaded up. It seems to be the center of a lot of stuff that I'm talking about, even though I don't fully understand the meaning, And eventually, hopefully, I'll piece it all together. But, Lil Wayne even emergency landed in Omaha. Reminded us a lot of Prince before he died. He had to emergency land, and then he died on the elevator and whatnot. Omaha equaled 38. Lil Wayne equaled 38. It was right around the time that we got the Alton Sterling, Philando Castile stuff. I believe Minnesota equals 38. Baton Rouge or Louisiana equals 38. Lots of 38 stuff. The word death equals 38. Chanhassen, where Prince is from, equals 38. Anyway, also the Bill Schneider guy, it says he was from St. Joseph, Missouri, but his father was from Omaha. And I'm not going to go into all these, but I've talked about St. Joseph, Missouri a whole lot. We had the bailiff shooting in St. Joseph, Michigan that was connected to the Miss America. I need to go back and relook at some of these stories. We even had the death of this Jacob Wetterling, or they found him or whatever. Can't remember where they even found him. St. Joseph. He was from St. Joseph, Minnesota. Can't even remember it all, There's just so much information. There was something to do with the movie Charlie St. Cloud and the St. Cloud, Minnesota mall stabbing or whatever. You can come to this blog. I'll leave this in the description as well. But I have a whole bunch of posts on St. Joseph. And whatever, might as well just keep talking. Wanted to make a short video, but never works that way. But it says, when you read farther down on this Ron Prince guy, it says the assistants under Ron Prince who have become whatever NFL coaches, NCAA coaches. One of them's Raheem Morris, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Old coach, whatever. What's funny is I actually met this guy before. He's been in this small town that I live in because he's married to, I don't know her name. I think it's Abby Bousted, maybe that's her name, possibly. I know her mom though, but they live like 10 miles that way or whatever. So in Woodbine, and yeah, so he's came back and he's been to this town before, and of course it's just a bunch of old white drunk guys who they see a black guy in the bar and they're like, "What's this dude doing in the bar?" and staring at him, trying to cause problems, and he could probably destroy every one of them, but just, I don't know, just interesting because I've talked a lot about how stuff connects to my life and whatnot. And of course, the only NFL coach that I've ever personally met in my real life is now a coach with the Atlanta Falcons. And if I would have just simplified what I was being shown, they were showing me the Falcons from the Simpsons episode with Dan Marino, where the Falcons win the Super Bowl or whatever in that Simpsons episode. And it's just interesting, The only coach I've ever met also is a coach of the Atlanta Falcons who are going to the Super Bowl now. But I guess, I did actually meet him at the golf course. That's what I have written in here. I met him at the golf course, but he was, you know, after everyone leaves the golf course, a lot of people go up to the bar or whatever. So that's what I was talking about. All these old drunk white guys, you know, hating the black guy that comes into the bar or whatever. But I did actually meet him at the golf course in the clubhouse. Put in here the Falcons' first game of the season was even a loss to his old team, Tampa Bay, which is pretty interesting, you know. And then, what did I write in here? There was even a time where they played the Rams, and then they played the 49ers right after it. And I've talked about how there's a big parallel between these two teams and how it connects to the Nebraska Cornhuskers. I'm not going to go into that big old spiel either, but I've talked about it in tons of videos. Think about just Manning in general as well. You know, it just reminds me of Peyton Manning, Eli Manning, their dad, possibly maybe Danny Manning. I can't think of any other Mannings other than a town that we used to play in sports when I was in high school, Manning, Iowa, who was actually like really good at football, I believe. I think they even won the state championship the year after I graduated. But who knows? Gonna leave it at that. You know, this video is already long enough. Just hopefully it makes sense. I'm sure anybody new is not gonna understand anything whatsoever, but there is a lot of interrelated stories going on. Lots of 17 in this story. And I know that it's got to be connected to, you know, Michelle Obama and Melania Trump possibly. Something to do with, I'm going to go back and look at my other video I talked about in regards to transgendered, and it was something to do with the College World Series. So, can't remember. I'll leave it in the description though. I feel like there was a whole bunch of 117 in that video. But anyway, peace.